morning. I'm teacher Sherile. Welcome to this module on hypothesis testing. This module is intended to help you. Now, get ready with your materials so that we can start. To begin with, we have two learning objectives. First, we should be able to illustrate null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, level of significance, rejection region, and types of errors in hypothesis testing. Second, we must identify the parameter to be tested given a real-life problem. To assess your prior knowledge regarding the topic, let us try to answer the pre-assessment part. Instruction: choose the letter of the best answer and write it on your paper.
Number 1. This refers to an intelligent guess about a population proportion. A. Hypothesis. B. Test statistic. C. Decision. D. Interpretation. Number 2. When the null hypothesis is rejected, which of the following is true? A. There is sufficient evidence to back up the decision. B. There is no sufficient evidence to back up the decision. C. The conclusion is guaranteed. D. The conclusion is not guaranteed. Number 3. For the 95% confidence level, blank. Letter A. Alpha is equal to 0.01. Letter B. Alpha is equal to 0.05. Letter C. Alpha is equal to 0.10. Letter D. Alpha is equal to 0.025. Number 4. The level of significance is also known as blank. A. Probability of type 1 error. B. Beta error. C. Probability of type 2 error. D. Validity error. Number 5. The purpose of hypothesis testing is to reach a conclusion about blank by examining the data content in blank. Letter A. A population. A sample. Letter B. An experiment. A sample. Letter C. A population. An experiment. Letter D. A sample. A population.
In junior high, you were told that there are two branches of statistics, descriptive and inferential. Descriptive statistics describes data, while inferential statistics allows you to make predictions from that data. In the previous module, you were already introduced to one of the main areas of inferential statistics, which was estimation of parameter. In this module, we will discuss the second main area of inferential statistics, which is hypothesis testing. Before moving to our next lesson, you are given 5 minutes to reflect on this question. In every decision in life, what do you think are the important things to consider before taking action? Our topic for today is hypothesis testing. A statistical hypothesis is a conjecture about a population parameter. This conjecture may or may not be true. There are two types of hypothesis. Number 1, null hypothesis. It is a statement saying that there is no significant difference between population parameter and the specific value being claimed. Number 2, alternative hypothesis. It is a statement saying that there is a significant difference between population parameter and the specific value being claimed. This is a statement that will be true once the null hypothesis is rejected.
Example number 1. The LB company produces an average of 4% defective bulbs each day. Recently, some of the machines were upgraded. Out of the 400 bulbs randomly selected, only 14 bulbs were found defective. Does this suggest that there is a decrease in the number of defective bulbs produced each day? Given population, the proportion of defective bulbs produced per day. Null hypothesis, the proportion of defective bulbs produced per day is 4%. Alternative hypothesis, the proportion of defective bulbs produced per day is less than 4%.
It is noteworthy to remember that the null and alternative hypothesis cannot be true at the same time. A statistical test will be conducted to the data from the sample in order to make a decision on whether the null hypothesis should be rejected or not. In doing a hypothesis testing, there are 4 possibilities that could take place. They are illustrated in the table below.
The table shows the 2 types of error that could occur when the decision made does not align with the true state of nature. The 2 types of error are: number 1, type 1 error is committed when the researcher rejects a null hypothesis when in fact it is true. The probability of committing type 1 error is called the level of significance. Alpha is used to represent the probability of a type 1 error. Number 2, type 2 error. Beta is used to represent the probability of a type 2 error. It is committed when the researcher fails to reject a null hypothesis that is false.
In our inference, we base our decision from only one sample. Thus, there is a possibility that we may commit an error. However, to minimize the probability of committing a type 1 error, we can decrease the value of alpha, also called the level of significance. The level of significance corresponds to the rejection region, and the difference of 1 and the alpha corresponds to the area of the curve occupied by the non-rejection region. The most commonly used values for alpha are 0.01, 0.05, and 0.10. When the study deals with life and death situations, it is advisable to use 0.01 or less. But when it is on social research, it can simply use 5% or 10%. For each level of significance, there corresponds a level of confidence. For example, a level of significance of 5% corresponds to a 95% level of confidence.
The rejection region or critical region is the range of values of the test value that indicates that there is a significant difference between the actual value of the parameter and its hypothesized value. This means that the null hypothesis should be rejected. The non-rejection area or non-critical region or acceptance region is the range of values of the test value that indicates that the difference was probably due to chance and that the null hypothesis should be rejected.
To identify the rejection and non-rejection area, which will be our basis in accepting or rejecting the null hypothesis, we need to identify the nature of our hypothesis first. The two types of tests are one-tailed test or directional test and two-tailed test or non-directional test. The point that separates the rejection and non-rejection area is called the critical value, which is derived from the level of significance. In a hypothesis testing, the following are the most common critical values based on the level of significance and type of test.
Example number 2. A popcorn company says that at least 95% of their kernels will pop when microwaved. A critic says this is too high of a claim for a 90% level of confidence. The critic says that the claim is too high. Thus, he is pertaining that the proportion should be less than 95%. Therefore, the alternative hypothesis denotes a less than symbol, which makes it a one-tailed test, specifically left-tailed test. Given parameter, the proportion of kernels that will pop when microwaved. Null hypothesis, the proportion of kernels that will pop when microwaved is 95%. Alternative hypothesis, the proportion of kernels that will pop when microwaved is less than 95%. The level of significance is 0.10 because of the 90% level of confidence. Therefore, the critical value is negative 1.28.
I hope you're ready to answer the following activity. Activity 1. Write the null and alternative hypothesis in words and in symbols for each situation.
Number 1. A pharmaceutical company claims that their pain reliever capsule is 70% effective, but a clinical test on this capsule showed 65 out of 100 effectiveness. Number 2. A politician believes that he is favored by 85% of voters. An opponent says this is too high for him to claim. Number 3. An electric company says that the average consumption of residents in a certain town is 300 kilowatt-hour per month. However, the town's mayor says their town's residents consume less. Number 4. A barangay official claims that the mean family income of his constituents is 30,000 pesos. But some group of residents believe that this is not true. Number 5. A fitness club claims that their routines can elevate heart rates up to 200 BPM on the average. A critic says this is an overestimate of the actual average. Activity 2. Determine whether the test is one-tailed test or two-tailed test. Number 1. A researcher claims that a method of teaching affects learning. Number 2. A food additive enhances food flavor. Number 3. A study habit improves the memory. Number 4. Health is related to lifestyle. Number 5. People's culture affects tourism.
Very good. Let's learned something by doing Activity 3. Write word or words on the blanks that will complete the following sentences.
Number 1. The statement, "There is a difference between a parameter and a specific value" is called blank. Number 2. When the value of the test statistics lies on the rejection region, we will blank the null hypothesis. Number 3. In hypothesis testing, the maximum allowable probability of committing a type 1 error is symbolized by blank. Number 4. A 99% confidence level corresponds to a blank level of significance. Number 5. The blank separates the rejection region from the non-rejection region.
Good work! Continue answering Activity 4 on page 12. Given the null and alternative hypothesis, determine the hypothesis test used. Then, sketch the graph of each to present the rejection and non-rejection region. To test if you have really understood the lesson content in this module, answer the given post-assessment.
Number 1. A one-tailed test is called a right-tailed test when the alternative hypothesis includes the symbol letter A, equal sign, letter B, not equal, letter C, greater than, letter D, less than. Number 2. The level of significance is also known as blank. Letter A, probability of type 1 error. Letter B, beta error. Letter C, probability of type 2 error. Letter D, validity error. Number 3. This refers to an intelligent guess about a population proportion. Letter A, hypothesis. Letter B, test statistic. Letter C, decision. Letter D, interpretation. Number 4. When the null hypothesis is rejected, which of the following is true? Letter A. There is sufficient evidence to back up the decision. Letter B. There is no sufficient evidence to back up the decision. Letter C. The conclusion is guaranteed. Letter D. The conclusion is not guaranteed. Number 5. What do we call the point that separates the rejection and non-rejection region? Letter A, level of significance. Letter B, critical value. Letter C, intersection. And letter D, level of confidence.
For your additional activity, identify the null hypothesis, alternate hypothesis, level of significance, and level of confidence of the following. Afterwards, sketch the graph of each item to show the rejection, non-rejection region, and the critical value.
A librarian of a school claims that all their grade 8 students read an average of 10 storybooks a month with a standard deviation of 2 books. A random sample of grade 8 students read an average of 12 books a month and a standard deviation of 1 book. The confidence statement is 95%.
Congratulations! At last, we are finished with our lesson. Again, I am Ma'am Sherile saying goodbye. See you later!